Welcome to Iron Island Discs, a podcast series where we talk to Irish people from different walks of life as they reflect on their own journeys. Join me, Russell McDermott, as we explore the many aspects of Irishness and what it means to each of our guests through life's ups and downs. Deb Grant, welcome to Iron Island Discs.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
And have you been to the Iron Islands before, or is this your first trip?
No, I've been a couple of times before, both times when I was a young kid. And there's little vignettes that I still remember of my time there. It was when I must have been about 4 and my sister was 6, and my mum and dad rented bikes with baskets on the back, and it's just cycled all over the island with us on the back, which is something that's hard to picture now that they're sort of a bit more elderly and, me and my sister are much bigger. But yeah, that's my prevailing memory of being there.
And the weather? Was it good weather memory or bad weather memory?
It must have been good if they were on bikes, cycling all over the place. I seem to remember it being good. It must have been, one of those anomalous good West of Ireland summers.
Well, I've been there 2 or 3 times and the weather was fantastic. The water was tropical. I never want to go back just in case, So,
you don't work for the tourist board, do you?
Yeah, no, I don't. But I'm just afraid, when you're afraid to go back to places in case they're not the way you remember they were the one time you went.
Absolutely. Do you know, my partner is from Yorkshire and we've been back to Ireland a few times since we've been together. And every single time we've been back, I don't know how this has happened, but the weather has been glorious. I keep trying to explain to him, this is not the usual. Maybe it is these days, I don't know. But I feel like he's getting a false impression of the place.
Well, look, even in Dublin, looking out a grey window, it's not advertising. Global warming is grey for us, so there's no big heat wave.
Oh, shame.
And if you're going to Iron Island, would you fly or go by ferry? How did you go when you went?
We went by plane. I remember.
I say.
It was, it must have been. It was very exciting because obviously we were young kids and we went on this tiny, tiny, tiny plane. And I swear to God, I remember looking out the window at the wing and the wing appeared to have sellotape holding it in place. I remember pointing it out to my sister. Sellotape.
My God, and were you scared though?
Don't know if that plane is out of commission now, but it got us there and it got us back. So that's the main thing.
Might have to leave your email if people want to get back to you on that. Please write to Debbie. Deb Grant. And how'd you end up in radio? That's something you always wanted to do, broadcasting and music?
Yeah, I suppose I was always obsessed with music. But the radio thing, I mean, me and my sister used to make these, we used to record onto cassette, these sort of fake radio shows. I think at that stage, though.
Up in your bedroom?
Yeah, or just like wandering around the house trying to interview my parents and stuff like that, generally being pests. It was a time before the internet, so you had to be creative trying to make your own fun. But I don't know if that was just out of boredom or if it was something I actually had designs on doing. And then as I got older, I started getting into collecting records and DJing. And then I sort of figured out that doing radio would be a nice way of sort of having a captive, attentive audience. Even if they weren't really there, I could imagine I had a captive, attentive audience. And so, I suppose collecting music and the sort of being in the spirit of sort of sharing music was always something I was interested in. I never pictured myself having a career doing it, but that's another story.
But it was the music that was your first trigger, was it? That's what you really loved?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I always say this, but I used to completely monopolize the car stereo when I was a kid. To other family members would object, and I would make these obsess over making these mixtapes for the car stereo, and then force everyone in the car to listen to them until they begged me to stop. So yeah,
do your family still talk to you?
She's long gone. I'm sure she'd be quite surprised if she could see what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
But yeah, just always, it was just a natural thing I was drawn to. There's this sort of family lore. My mum's dad died on the day I was born, and so my middle name is Louise after his middle name Louis.
Yeah,
and he was a jazz musician and very, very musical, and so I always like to think that was kind of passed down to me.
And where was all that happening, in Dublin, or?
Yeah, that was in Dublin. So I was born in Dublin, and my mum's side of the family came from Eastern Europe. And her dad spent a lot of time in America, in New Orleans, making music, but then came back to Dublin.
So that's where the jazz comes from, you think?
Yeah, well, I think he was interested in jazz because that was kind of, I mean, he played alto sax, and I think he probably started off playing in orchestras and stuff. And then he got interested in jazz because that was what was popular at the time. And then he went off to New Orleans because that was obviously the place you go for jazz. So yeah, it was just kind of in his veins. And I've been to New Orleans a couple of times, and I always feel, I mean, I love jazz music anyway, but I feel a real connection to him when I go there.
Yeah. And if it was in the old days, a passport used to have a kind of a description of what your profession was. And nowadays, you don't do that because the world has changed. But how would you define yourself? As a broadcaster, a DJ?
I suppose more broadcaster these days. I feel like if I was going to put anything on my passport, that would probably be the least messery sounding job description I could probably put on there.
Yeah. And the whole Annie Frankenstein, talk me through that.
So that was, this is going to sound awful in the context of, this present day and age, but it was just a funny, like, stupid portmanteau.
Yeah.
My mum's side of the family is Jewish. I consider myself to be Jewish.
Yeah.
And my sister's boyfriend coined this nickname, Anne Frankenstein. We just thought it was a funny portmanteau. I feel like in the world of, because long before I started DJing on radio, I was DJing in clubs and bars and stuff. And in that world, I mean,
anything
you see
goes.
Loads of, well, you see loads of stupid DJ names. There was a particular trend for that kind of tasteless portmanteau, Brian Jonestown Massacre and all that stuff for bands, and the same with DJs. So it was just a silly name. And then I realized more and more once I got into radio, and I was saying it over and over again. I was like, I can't do this. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And you came to that conclusion yourself and came in one day to, I think it was BBC6 when you revealed yourself as Deb Grant one morning.
Yeah. So that
you were sitting in for Chris Hawkins or something, and suddenly you became Deb Grant. And I said, my God, last week you were one thing.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm glad I did it then. Do you know, it was difficult because I had sort of built this, there were green shoots of a career coming up. I'd been on Jazz FM and used this name, and it was obviously quite a distinctive name. And I spoke to my boss at Jazz FM about it. I spoke to my boss at BBC about it because I was sort of still working permanently at Jazz FM and doing bits and pieces here and there for Six Music when I changed it. And both of them said, listen, it's completely up to you. Yeah. No one put any pressure on me at all. In retrospect, it seemed completely obvious that was the right thing to do. But yeah, there was no pressure felt from any direction. It was.
You sound more serious. You sound very serious when you're Deb Grant,
I am serious.
Okay, I believe you. And you do all your music and your broadcasting career in the UK? Did you do anything here in Ireland before you left?
No, not really. I mean, I moved to London when I was 19, so I didn't really have a chance to get anything going. Well, I did. I definitely did a bit of DJing. I used to play in Doyle's a little bit, covering for my friend Nikki, who was the DJ there for years. Yeah. And parties and stuff like that. And I did a bit of writing for the Sunday Indo when I was in Dublin. But yeah, that came from a transition year work experience thing. They kept me on.
And you were writing there as Deb or as
I think I was Deborah Grant.
Oh, Deborah. Excuse me.
Yeah, very formal. I was even more serious then. But yeah, nothing really started to gather momentum until after I moved to the UK.
You used to trot into Abbey Street, did you, to write your column, did you?
Yeah, I did actually. It was up in Barry Egan's office. He was.
Barry's still going.
Yeah, is he still going?
Yeah, he's still going. He does these pen profiles and one-to-one interviews. He does very kind of esoteric stuff down and gets to know people. Yeah, he's still out there.
Yeah, he was very good to me, I have to say.
And you found going to UK easy to settle in?
I think I don't know if I did find it easy. I definitely loved being in London and being in a very multicultural city, because even when I left Dublin in 2003 or 2004, And it still, I go back to Dublin now and it feels